All right, y'all, welcome back to Combat Arms channel. Okay, so like the title says, we are going to be going over 8 crucial things that I think a CQB team should have. Now, when I'm talking about CQB, I'm talking about close quarter battle, and at least generally when the US is referring to CQB, we're talking about room clearing or building clearing and the tactics associated with that, not necessarily like hand-to-hand combat or anything like that. So CQB, close quarter battle, again, that's the tactics you use to actually move through a house and clear it out. So we're going to be talking about equipment that I think every CQB team should have in one form or another. It might change slightly, it might look a little bit different, but I'll sort of explain each item and why I think it's crucial. Now, I could have probably buffed it out to about 10 things a CQB team should have, but honestly, I would have been like reaching for it. And it's not necessarily things that you really need. It's just things that are nice to have. So we're going to be going through this list. I have a bunch of layers down here. I'll just put like a blur or I don't know, maybe like a graphic over here so you guys can't see what I'm about to click on next. But this is a picture here of some students over at CQB school in Virginia. So this is a schoolhouse you actually have to pass whenever you're going onto the recapture tactics team. There's also like a selection process before and after the schoolhouse just to see if you're, fit for the team. But this is the schoolhouse itself. Again, CQB school for the Marines is 7 weeks long. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's pretty challenging. I gotta say, I'd say maybe 40% of the class doesn't really graduate whenever you're actually going through it, but it's a lot of fun. It really is. You can see we got the ballistic shields here. We have breaching equipment. We have the flight suits, which are awesome. We have rifles and pistols. So pretty generic looking CQB team for sure. We could have had a little bit better, helmet setups and maybe even like hearing protection setups, but it wasn't really like that when I was going through. But yeah, I was on the team in 2014 and 2015. So the recapture tactics team, you have one on the East Coast and you also have one on the West Coast. And you'll pretty much look like this. You might get a little bit advanced equipment. You might change your helmet out slightly. You might use like a Benelli M1014 as opposed to Mossberg 500 for breaching. So it'll change slightly, but this is pretty much what you're going to be looking like. Okay, so we'll move into the first thing. So I'll just get rid of the layer and then there we go. Okay, so I have a bunch of pictures. I'll have pictures for every little slide, if you will. And then you can see me. This is unrelated to me actually being on the CQB team, but you can see what I'm wearing here. So night vision. Now, why I think night vision is really awesome for a CQB team is there's a few ways to actually do an entry. Now, there's generally 3 methods that people will use when they're actually talking about making entry and whatnot. So you have a stealth entry, you have dynamic entry, and then you also have a combination. So when we're talking about stealthy, this is really where night vision is going to be coming in because you have the ability to, cut the power to the building and then go in with night vision. So you have that advantage of being able to see if the enemy doesn't have flashlights or if there's not adequate lighting. Or at nighttime, of course, if you have night vision, you could also do the same thing, and it really helps a lot more. So night vision is a great thing to have just because it allows you to have that advantageous position of being able to see in the dark as opposed to other people. The enemy, if they can't see in the dark, it's going to be a lot safer for you because they're not going to be able to see you or engage you or really even react as effectively. Now, there are some downsides with night vision. If someone does have a white light or just a flashlight on their weapon, that will hurt a lot whenever you're looking through night vision and someone flashes you with the light. So yeah, there's things to consider. There's pros and cons, but these are really great for if you're trying to do a stealth method of entry. Now you also have dynamic, which is basically when you're just breaching, you're going explosive breach or mechanical ballistic breach, and you're just going in, you're being loud, you're verbally communicating as opposed to non-verbally communicating, and you might be just rocking flashlights while you're doing it. So night vision has that stealth advantage, but then you could also do dynamic, and then combination would be either moving in stealthy, and then whenever you actually make contact, just making it dynamic, or just going back and forth from stealthy, dynamic, back to stealthy, or even you could have one team doing a stealth entry while another team does a dynamic entry so the enemy doesn't really understand what's happening or where y'all are actually flowing from. So night vision, great thing. So you can see here, if you have a laser, it's awesome, really accurate and fast shot placements when you have night vision and laser set up. And of course, if you have dual tube night vision, it's way better for that depth perception. You're going to be able to, see things at almost the appropriate depth from you, so you're not running into door frames or anything crazy. So whatever night vision you're using, you just need to be sure that you're actually training with it. So really awesome thing to have, just in general, but it's a cool thing to have for CQB. All right, now the next thing is a flashlight. Okay, so you can see this is a picture of me here towards the end of CQB school. Okay, so right here, if you guys can't see, we have these big flashlights. So, I mean, you can use whatever flashlights you want. So this is what it looks like actually at CQB school when you're doing low light or no light engagement, just being able to practice with the flashlight. Now, again, practicing with the flashlight is a whole nother thing. Just like with night vision and actually using a laser, you need to be pretty scrupulous about when you're actually using it, because you sort of need to think of it as another trigger, because if you just leave your light on, especially when you're in the hallway or moving through the house, the enemy can see that really easily. So you want to be sure that you're only turning on your flashlight when you're going into a room or trying to clear something out. So it's even better when you have something like this. So this is just a normal Surefire flashlight, and then you also have a pressure switch, which it just makes it a lot easier to actually manipulate the flashlight. It makes it a little bit easier to control, especially just holding like a normal grip. So these are awesome thing to have. Again, you can use this with dynamic or stealth entries really, but again, if you're going to be trying to use it for stealth, you just need to be cognizant of who can see your flashlight at what point in the house, just so they're not seeing where the assault force is while you're moving through the house. So flashlights are very good things to have, even if it's like fully daytime. If you go into a room that doesn't have power, and I've seen this especially at CQB school, you go to a room that doesn't have power, it is extremely dark, and things can get extremely sketchy when you don't have something to illuminate certain corners or even like under furniture or something. So it's an awesome thing to have for clearing out dark rooms or dark alleyways. And it's just a great thing to have, because if you have like a strobe effect, you can, blind the enemy, and it does like a whole lot psychologically. So let's say you go into a room and you drive the corner and all of a sudden they have a strobe in their face, then, it could be the difference between you getting shots or them getting shot. So just things to consider. It's a great thing. I would definitely recommend having a strobe on it as well, but they are very, very clutch if not necessary. All right, next thing, flashbangs. Again, I'll move over so you guys can see. So these are the flashbangs that we actually used on the team. This is a Mark 13 flashbang, also called a diversionary device. So if I remember the specs for this, it had a 1.2 second fuse. It burns at like 2,700 degrees Celsius. If you're like right next to it, pretty hot. It's got like 2.7 million lumens whenever it actually goes off. So very bright. 180 decibels, which is, if you're not wearing any ear protection, it's basically going to destroy your eardrums, especially if you're inside a confined space. So these things are really awesome to use. Again, that 1.2 second fuse is clutch, because you get a door open, or if there is a door open already and you go across the doorway, like you can see these fellows here. I'm guessing one of them either opened the door or they just pied across, and then they get that flashbang in. So you can see, this is a pretty good shot of it, because you can see just all the flash and the sparks coming off. Not a whole lot of overpressure. It's not made to, kill someone like a fragmentation grenade. It's not going to have a whole lot of overpressure, and it's not really going to like mess you up if you're inside the room. It's meant to just, take your attention away from the doorway by being super loud, super bright. And generally, when you're using them, you want to get it just inside the door frame. So in case someone was looking at the door, all of a sudden they look down because something just fell into the room, and now they can't see, they can't hear, so it really messes with their senses, and it's very distracting. It's a very good tool to have. I would recommend having flashbangs for every room clearing operation that you're going to be doing. And it's kind of a shame the infantry doesn't really use these as much, but it's just awesome, super helpful, and it really increases your survivability, or at least your comfort whenever you're actually going inside of a room. So this picture here was at CQB school again, so you can see the flashbang going off and they're about to make entry. So right as that thing's going off, you're getting inside the room, taking full effect and full advantage of it. So it's really easy to carry. You can have a pouch for it, or you could even like rig it up a certain way where you're just having it chill in your molly. But it's super awesome to have a flashbang. or multiple flashbangs at your disposal. All right, now with that is ear protection. So there are like foam earplugs you can get, and they're really not that great. You can't hear anything. They tend to fall out a lot, especially when you're just like inside of a house and you're getting really sweaty. The earplugs, like the foam ones, tend to fall out. Even if you get like the triple flange ear pro, it's still not going to work that great. So this is like some cheap Surefire ear pro that you can get. It's supposed to help with like hearing conversations. And at the same time, it's got like the triple flange. So it is relatively useful as far as just being minimalistic and working relatively effectively. And it's also kind of comfortable as opposed to like other ear pro, just because it's got like the certain design. But for me, I absolutely hated these. Did not work for me at all. And again, you still can't hear that well. And if you can't hear, then you don't have that well of situational awareness. So that's why it's awesome to have this electronic hearing protection. So we can see it's nice and easy. You can fold it down. And then with the electronic ear protection, whenever you actually fire, it'll sort of like cut that noise off. And then when you're actually talking and communicating, that goes through clearly, which is awesome. So anything that's really loud, like a flashbang or a gunshot, gets completely cut off, and it sort of focuses on the normal conversational tone. So you can communicate really well. You can keep that situational awareness by just not having your ears ringing the entire time. And again, it's an awesome thing to have when you're going through a building. So you can see I have some here on my helmet, and then this is just another setup you can use. But definitely recommended. If you're going to be using flashbangs, you need to have some earring protection or some hearing protection, because if you throw a flashbang and you don't have any hearing protection, it's going to hurt your ears. Even if you're not inside the room, it's going to do something as far as just disorient you. And you don't really want to get disoriented when you're going through a house and you're about to make entry. All right, next thing is breaching equipment. So you can see I have a bunch of stuff here. So this is just a normal breaching kit. This is like a Black Hawk breaching kit. So you have a Halligan tool, also called a hooligan tool. A lot of people will say that. You have some bolt cutters, and then you also have the sledgehammer. Now you also have a shotgun, so you can do ballistic breaching. You also have thermal breaching with like an exothermic torch. So this is me using the exothermic torch during like a little demonstration. And then you also have, of course, explosive breaching. So you're not going to necessarily need all of these, depending on the building, depending on the equipment, or depending on the material that the building's actually made of, will determine what you actually need to bring. But it's nice to have all of these at your disposal if you do have that option. So this is my shotgun here, my personal Mossberg 590, really awesome little shotgun. You could also get something like a weapons catch. So you can see here, this dude has a makeshift weapons catch. So it's basically just something it's like a loop that you put on the back of your body armor that you can just put like a shotgun or maybe even like a Halligan tool, and it'll hold it in place so you can just take that off, or somebody else can take it off your back and do some breaching. So little shotguns like this are super helpful. My personal favorite as far as mechanical breaching is a Halligan tool, because you can use this to either pry, you can use the fork tool to try and defeat the hinges, you can use this little spike right here to defeat locks, and then you could also use the wedge here for opening doors. And this is good for inward opening doors and outward opening doors. So if you need to pry it open towards you, or if you want to even smash the door in, you can use this almost as like a ram, and you can push the door in or punch the door in. So it's a pretty versatile tool. I like the Halligan tool. That's my personal favorite. And then down here, you can see an RTT, Recapture Tactics Team guy, using a Benelli M1014 to do some breaching. Again, exothermic torch, really awesome thing to have, because you can just defeat metal pretty easily. It's just a little bit harder to carry around. And then if you have an explosive breacher, you can use that awesome method of entry technique to blow in. And that just creates like a little shock and awe, which is awesome to have. So that's definitely more for dynamic entries. But yeah, breaching tools, very, very necessary. This is just another thing. So you can see here, this is a weapons catch that we had. So you can adjust it depending on what breaching equipment you had. You can sort of tighten it down a little bit. But yeah, this is at CQB school. All right, so we got 3 things left. Next is Chem Lights. Okay, so these are very important. A lot of people wouldn't even consider like how important these actually are. So let's imagine you're going through a room. It's a long hallway. Let's just picture a long hallway with a bunch of rooms on the side. As you're going through the house, you have teams or even like pairs just peeling off, taking down these rooms as quick as possible while maintaining security down the hallway. Now, let's say one person goes outside of a room and then you're pushing up inside the stack. You're pushing up that hallway, but then you look to your side and then you see a room and you're not really sure if it was cleared out or not. The reason why we have Chem Lights is so we can mark whenever a room is actually cleared. So what we would do is have a green Chem Light. So whenever we'd clear out a room, if it was totally clear, we would activate the green Chem Light and put it in the door frame on the side that we actually came from. So everybody has a good warm and fuzzy of where you came from and if that room is actually clear. And you can see it really easily from the hallway because you put it in the door frame. Now, I've seen other people use like spray paint. They'll spray paint the door frame. You could also get chalk and just like hit the door frame real quick. There's a lot of things you can do, but Chem Lights are pretty versatile and they're also really easy to see. You can use them at night, you can use them at low lights, and you can use them during the day, and they work really well. So you can see here, this is under night vision, extremely easy to see. You could also get infrared Chem Lights, which are pretty helpful. They're not as bright, so they're not going to glow as much. So if you're doing like a stealth entry, you can use those infrared lights so it's not messing with your night vision so much. But yeah, Chem Lights, awesome thing to have. You can never have too many of these. I mean, whenever you're trying to mark anything, you can use a Chem Light. And then you could also get these in different colors. So red Chem Lights we would use for like, an improvised explosive device. If we found out there was an explosive or booby trap, or if there was something else that we wanted to mark, we could do that. And blue is generally going to be like, this is where the medic would be, or this is where the casualty collection point would be. So overall, they're super versatile. You can color code things. They're really awesome to have. Okay, next thing is gloves. Now, this is something that people wouldn't really consider because it's just like not really cool to think about, just like what sort of gloves people use. So we had these. These are just some Nomex flight gloves, and they're good because, like, yeah, they're pretty thin and they generally don't last too long, but they are flame retardant, which is awesome, especially for flashbangs. And they're really they're thin and they're maneuverable. So it allows you to manipulate your holster really easily. It allows you to get a nice grip on your pistol, because you can see like here with some gloves, if the cut is weird and there's like a lot of space in between the glove and your actual webbing of your hand, it gets really hard to get a good grip on your pistol or even your weapon itself, like your rifle. So not having nice maneuverable gloves, either thin or thick, if you find some good thick ones, then it's awesome because you can manipulate things, you can feel things a little bit better. So I generally tend to prefer thinner gloves. And even if you buy like $300 gloves, they're not going to last that long. Gloves are meant to get jacked up. So these gloves are pretty cheap. You can probably get them for like $10, $20 even. So they're awesome. I like them. They're nice and thin. They keep my dexterity, and they just keep the sweat from like messing up everything. Because if you get really sweaty hands, whenever you're inside the house, everything gets way hotter because you have all these hot, adrenaline soaked dudes running around, clearing rooms, flashbangs are going off, weapons are shooting potentially. It gets really, really hot inside. So you're going to start sweating. And if you start sweating, it might be harder to manipulate your holster. Well, it's going to be a little bit harder to manipulate your holster. Now, sweat generally isn't going to be a huge issue, especially if you train a lot. You sort of just get used to it. But it is just like a little added level of assurity. So, yeah, gloves are nice. Your hands will get very, very jacked up if you don't have gloves. And if you cut your hand, if you burn your hand, if you smash a finger, you can be out of the fight really easily. So very, very underrated thing to have for sure, just in the military in general. Okay, next thing is going to be knee pads. Now this is the last thing. Again, with gloves and knee pads, they're not necessarily like, top tier. You don't really need them. But for me, I definitely recommend having gloves and knee pads. Knee pads especially too, because if all it takes is for you to take a knee the wrong way on like the concrete or on a rock or something, and you realize that you want to wear knee pads all the time. So these are the knee pads that we had on the team. Really not that great. Again, you can buy your own knee pads. These are just the knee pads we had at CQB school, which are pretty big. They kind of restrict your movement a little bit, and you definitely feel that they're on. and sometimes they can retain a lot of heat. So a lot of people aren't really, a huge fan of these. You have some, more streamlined ones like these, and then also the Arc'teryx ones. These are pretty good. It'll provide a good level of, padding and security, so you're not taking a knee the wrong way. Because if you bust your knee, it sucks. Especially if you take a knee on a rock, it's like the worst thing. Now you also have, Cryo Precision or just any other like combat pants where you have the built-in knee pads. Those are way better because it just allows you to be a little bit more maneuverable. It doesn't trap in that heat because you don't have these straps going around the back. It's literally just built into the pants. It's just like an insert. So they work really well. Whenever you actually take a knee, you have that security. You're not feeling it too much. So it's just an awesome thing to have as far as not trapping in the heat and just being comfortable. So that's a great thing if you really don't like wearing knee pads like this, because these tend to like slide down a lot. A lot of times you'll see people wearing knee pads and they'll be almost around their ankles because they tend to not hold their form very well, and they don't stay in place very well. So these are awesome to have because they will always be in the right place when you take a knee. And that's pretty much it. So yeah, that was 8 things. I guess we can just go through again real quick and look at everything. But yeah, feel free to let me know what you guys think as far as, what you think is really necessary. Now you can see here, ballistic shields, those are nice to have, but it's not really necessary. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a hindrance if you have, a bunch of ballistic shields, but it is a thing. Again, I just want to try and keep it as the bare minimum of what I think is pretty essential. Night vision is an awesome thing. Again, it allows you to be much more versatile about when you're operating, in what environments you're operating, and what sort of tactics you could be using. Because if you don't have, or if the enemy doesn't have night vision and you do, then that can be a game changer very easily. And we've seen it just with modern combats. You can rule the night, so to speak. You just need to not be complacent and use night vision or use the cover of night as your actual cover. You still need to actually take cover. Flashlights, yeah, you need to have flashlights. Things can get dark at any point. If you're on a mission for too long and you're going inside a structure, it doesn't have any lights or any power, you're going to want this. It's a great psychological weapon as well if you have a strobe or just shining a flashlight in someone's face. Does a whole lot. And then also with psychology, flashbangs, yeah, if someone's looking at a door, all of a sudden something drops in, they're going to naturally look at it because your eye is attracted to movement. So if something goes in the room, they're going to look at that flashbang and be like, well, because it has a 1.2 second fuse, it's going to go off like right when they look at it. So it's going to be a little bit too late. Ear protection, that's more for your essay as far as like your situational awareness, just maintaining that situational awareness, being able to hear your buddies, being able to communicate with them, and also just not having like a headache and just constant ringing from shooting and throwing flashbangs inside the room. Breaching, again, there's going to be locked doors. There's going to be, fences or chains, things that you need to get past that you didn't really expect. And having some sort of breaching equipment is going to allow you to get past that and keep the momentum. Because if you don't keep the momentum in CQB, then things can get really sketchy for you. Okay, and then we have Chem Lights, marking. Again, you need to be able to mark because you need people to understand that that area has been cleared. Like, you don't need to be freaking out, so you don't need to wrap your mind around that. There's a bunch of stuff going on already inside the house. The least you need to be concerned with is, did we actually clear this room out? And you also don't want to double tap rooms by clearing them out multiple times. So make sure you're actually marking where you were. Gloves, again, your hands can get jacked up. You're going to be completely out of the fight if your hands get burned or cut or broken up too much. So make sure you have some level of protection, but also maintain that dexterity. And then knee pads. Again, this wasn't really necessary, but it's necessary for me because all it takes is for you to take one wrong knee, and then you're going to want to realize that knee pads are pretty clutch, especially when you can get pants like this where it's built in and you don't really realize it. They're not really too heavy. They don't have any restriction as far as your movement. They're not going to slide around. It's just an awesome option, and I highly recommend that if you're going to be setting up a CQB loadout. But yeah, that's basically it. So let me know what you guys think if you have a little experience with CQB yourself, or just, if you've seen certain things in games or movies or in your military experience that you think would be really awesome to have or really necessary for a CQB team, or something that just even gives them the advantage. Put that down in the comments section. I'd love to hear it. I maybe would do like a a CQB loadout video whenever I get back to the States, so you guys can sort of see how I set up my gear for a CQB environment and why I do it that way. But that's going to be nuanced depending on what unit you're in, what operations you're doing. But let me know if you want to see any sort of CQB content. You can drop those recommendations in the comment section, and I'd love to check them out. But these videos are always fun to do. Pretty easy to just do like a little bit of a Photoshop here and there. But yeah, and then of course I threw in Garand Thumb. The little that meme right there. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It was fun for me to do, fun for me to explain why I think this stuff is necessary for a CQB team. But let me know what you think in the comment section. If you disagree or agree, I'm totally fine with reading that as well. So feel free to throw that down in the comment section. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. That is it for this one. So I will see y'all in the next one.